And it was when I was on the ice that I wasn't shy. And I could perform, I could be romantic, funny, whatever that person was meant to be. I started skating when I was about 8, almost 9 years old. I went on a school trip because the teacher at the time just took it upon herself to think, I'll organise a coach to take the kids skating. And I guess if it hadn't been for her, I wouldn't have fallen in love with it, really. I remember the first visit, I went on the ice and I just loved it. I can't describe it in any other way, I just loved it. And I think the hired skates that they had, mainly the boots were all brown, and they weren't very attractive. But because I got probably quite a small foot, they found an old pair of white ones. And every week I went, I asked if I could have these white ones, because it felt like the real thing. And then from there, it became a way of life, really.
Michael Hutchinson and Jane Torvill from Nottingham gave a delightful display.
I think it was the feeling of movement that I enjoyed. It's very unique to ice skating. You don't get that movement anywhere else.
The audience, with a sprinkling of ex-skating champs among them, were obviously impressed by their performance.
For me, when I started skating, it was all about the enjoyment of it, the fun of it. It was never, I want to be a world champion, an Olympic champion. It was never about competing, really. It was about enjoying it and also wanting to do it better. I think when you have a passion for something, you always want to get better at it.
I came from a little village called Calverton in Nottinghamshire, and at Christmas time I got a pair of ice skates. My stepmother had been a recreational skater. She thought it might be a good idea for me to get out of the little village and go to the big town Nottingham, which was 10 miles away. And I think my stepmom just thought, you need to see more than just the community of Calverton, because there's every chance that I'm going to be a miner like my dad. But at that time, we didn't have a car, so we had to get on a bus. And so Nottingham did feel a long, long way away. But for the first 2 weeks of getting my first pair of ice skates, I couldn't skate because I couldn't get to the ice rink. So I just walked around the house in them for 2 weeks. And that was my introduction to skating. When I walked into an ice rink for the very first time, it was magical. And certainly the Nottingham ice rink, it was an old rink, a cavernous place, just looked exotic. And ice, to me, the whiteness of it, the purity of it, I know it sounds cliche, but when I skated it felt like I was flying. I like gymnastics. I like the feeling of feeling free. And so as I was skating around, that freedom became even more. It was my escape.
I met Chris at the ice rink, I'm not sure how old I was, probably about 14. I met him because he started skating with a good friend of mine. I noticed him because he was very striking with his very blonde hair and blue eyes, and I always noticed that he liked to skate around fast as well.
I previously had another partner, Sandra Elson, but I think we were too alike. We were both a bit fiery, and it didn't last very long.
When Chris and I first skated together, it wasn't like, oh wow, this feels great, we're going to be great. It was just, we both had a passion for the same thing, and we both had that willingness to work, and we were both very disciplined. I mean, we're very different personality-wise, but as far as the ice skating was concerned, we both wanted the same thing.
Jane was at the ripe old age of 15. She'd finished pair skating. She was doing single skating, but at 15 she was maybe a bit old. But she kept on dancing, and a coach that I had at the time suggested we try out.
Even from the beginning, I noticed that Chris had that drive in him. He always wanted to do something better, and it had to be perfect. And if it wasn't perfect, then you have to do it again until it is. And I was very similar in that way, but I was happy to keep training, keep repeating everything until it was right.
I think we both had failed relationships or partnerships that we wanted to make this work.
The rest is history, as they say.
rather special train arrives in Sarajevo carrying the West German Olympic team, plus the hottest gold medal favourites of 1984, Jane Torvill and Christopher Dean.
We arrived in Sarajevo on the German team train because we'd been practicing and working in Oberstdorf, which is in Bavaria. That had become our second home, effectively.
It's lovely, the hat. We all love the hat.
Jane keeping out the cold in fur coat and hat because her official British team blazer didn't fit.
You always feel a bit for them, because I suppose having been a competitor, you know what the sort of build-up and tensions that come with it. And certainly with Torvill and Dean, there was a huge amount of expectation.
They were the hottest favourites of the entire Olympic Games. They were the one British hope, which is why there was so much attention on them. And they didn't quite understand what all the fuss was about.
As usual, the British, European and World Ice Dance champions were the main focus of attention. They're the best-known skaters in the world, and everyone wants to talk to them. But when it was time to leave for the village, something was amiss.
When we arrived in Sarajevo, we got off the train and, there's people around us and press, and we're moving down the station, and Jane suddenly remembers, I forgot your coat. And she dashed off, and then she's gone. She's left me. Where's Jane gone?
It was Christopher's coat. He took all the bags from me and said, can I get my coat? But I just forgot it.
Britain's ice dance world champions are the only serious medal prospect in our team of 55. But the endless scrutiny here of their every move and one slip in training has left them strangely tense and unsmiling.
It was hard when we first arrived to get an overall picture of Sarajevo because you're very much sort of herded around. So from leaving the train, we were straight into the village. They were very conscious of security, and if you wanted to get out of the village, you had to get a pass.
It's all part of the security, now so essential at Olympic events that the soldiers and their guns are as familiar as wallpaper.
Where the British team were housed, I remember they kept the boys and the girls separate. There was one single room within this apartment, and I got it as I was the most senior member and the one that it was possibly going to be my turn to win a medal. So I had the single room, which I was quite happy with, really, because then I can do my own thing, my own preparations.
We had 3 bedrooms, we had a kitchen, so we like to have a little house together. And we were on the same practices, so we travelled together, we warmed up in the same group together, so we were always together.
I was in a room on my own at Sarajevo. It was quite a stark room, there wasn't a lot of luxuries, it was functional. There was a bed, and I think there was a cupboard. And there was a bathroom shared by all the boys. It was just kind of an apartment block that just being built, and wasn't the Ritz or anything, but hey, if you're an ice skater, you're there to do a job.
I mean, it was a very basic room, like a dormitory, really. Just one single wooden bed. But my favourite thing was the blankets, which had the Olympic rings on and the symbol of that particular games, which was Zuko, the bear/wolf kind of character. And I was really excited to have this blanket, I remember.
How are you feeling now you're here in Sarajevo?
It was nice. It was a very sort of villagey sort of atmosphere, and everybody is getting ready for their own thing. It just feels, in actual fact, you feel sort of a little small within a big event.
I understand that you will be carrying the British flag.
Well, I just heard that, yes. Can't believe it yet. We were the main medal contenders. We were courting a lot of publicity. So the chef de mission asked if one of us would carry the flag. Well, actually, he asked me, I think. I don't think it was
It's
that
obvious,
lucky.
I know. Just Chris, not me.
And so, gosh, yeah, no, I was honoured.
Britain's champion duo on ice, Jane Torvill and Christopher Dean, were kept apart by Olympic regulations this afternoon. The organising committee refused to let both of them carry the Union flag at the opening of the 14th Winter Games at Sarajevo in Yugoslavia. So Christopher carried the flag and Jane marched in the front rank of the British team a few feet behind him. Michael Blakey describes the opening ceremony, which was watched by 500 million television viewers.
After days of protests about professionalism and a lack of snow, the formal opening of the 14th Winter Olympics went off without a hitch. Lebanon, in the throes of civil war, sent a team of 3. The Soviet Union, who headed the medals table at 6 of the last 7 Olympics, once again face a serious threat from East Germany. One gold medal they don't expect to win, ice dancing. Christopher Dean carried the Union Jack alone, despite the wishes of the British team that Jane Torvill should partner him. For once, she was 6 paces behind.
The temperatures were freezing, and they bust you in 4 hours, at least, before it was going to happen. And And so you've got all this thick gear on, because they said dress warm because it's going to be cold. But the buses were like 100 degrees inside. So you're boiling, you're taking it off, and they said, right, off we go. All the gear came on, and we're out.
Freezing.
And you're so conscious of not getting a cold, so conscious of not getting a fever or something like that. And yet at the same time, we absolutely wanted to march and be a part of that team spirit.
The fire on the grand pedestal has been lit. The venues have been illuminated. The contests have been declared open.
There was this kind of question mark. Are they an item? You know, are they together? Talk about American sweethearts. Well, these were two British sweethearts. I think that for the nation wanted this also to work for them, thinking of them as an item.
There's also a lot of speculation about our relationship, and we never admitted it or denied it. It was just left floating. And I think people kind of enjoyed that as well. It was part of the romantic vision. You know, we always equate it to Fred and Ginger. You know, you see them on the screen, they perform, and you believe what they're doing. And you believe as the movie and the credits roll that they go off happily waving in the distance. And for us, I think that was our image.
I remember doing some kind of a press conference after we'd won, and that's when more questions came, you know, because it was Valentine's Day when we'd won, and there's lots of, are you going to get married now?
There have been suggestions that you may soon decide to make your personal relationship a more permanent one. Is there any truth in that?
Chris, instead of saying no, because we had no intention of getting married.
We hadn't got a plan, really.
We hadn't got any plan about anything, only that we'd got the World Championships a month later. And Chris said, not yet, as a reply, which sent them all in a frenzy of, oh, well, they might be. Did you do that on purpose? Or did it just
my
came
mouth.
out?
You know how
Yeah.
things come out my mouth
I
sometimes.
do, yeah.
We travelled back on the bus from the, you know, in the same way going out. Nobody else was on it, except for Jane and myself, the driver, and Betty, going back. So it was quite a solitary morning until we got back to the village.
Our coach, Betty Calloway, was always with us. She was like guiding us and making sure that we were happy and not getting stressed, not getting too nervous.
We went back to the village and then went and had breakfast. Canteen was open, had a lazy breakfast.
We ate together, the three of us, and I think that was good for us because we had a grown-up there as well.
When I came across anybody in the canteen, you know, people would be saying, are you ready for tonight, what's happening? And I tried to make it very brief and short. Oh, fine, yep, it's all going good, moving on. Didn't want to get into a conversation about how I'm feeling. I didn't want to self-analyse how I was feeling.
To actually try to talk to Jane and Chris on the day of the competition, I think would have been a huge mistake. I think they were in a world of their own, and they stayed in a world of their own when they were on the ice and competing until it was all over, I think it's fair to say.
On paper, you wouldn't think it would make a dance, but it's a sort of sexy piece of music.
It was just so tremendously different to anything that had ever been done and was likely to be done in the future. It was, I thought it was a real masterpiece, truthfully, musically, because it was one piece, as opposed to the usual three cuts that everybody did.
If you look at what people danced to for ice dance competitions, they were much more showy. This was a much subtler routine and quite unique. When you watch the Russians, it was, you know, all bling. You know, there were big lifts and it was, you know, razzmatazz. This wasn't like that at all.
In our heads, it was a driving beat that was taking us somewhere. And the crescendo of the music that just grew and grew, that's what we wanted to create, that emotion that was building up to a climactic ending. And Bolero had it all, except it was 18 minutes long.
The tempo that they both felt was the most appropriate was just a little too long.
And as it worked out, we could get it down to 4 minutes 28. We can get it down to 4 minutes 10. Looked at the rules, and it says the stopwatch starts when you start to skate. And starting to skate, in my head, not when you start to move, but when your blades touch the ice. And Jane's blade didn't touch the ice until 4 minutes and 10 seconds.
I believe there's a dramatic ending that really involves you, Jane.
Well, we both die at the end. We're both dead.
You both die, so what do you do on the ice?
Lie down.
What are you doing?
In their minds, they're thinking about two young people who are unable to marry and so decide to end their lives. They're climbing a mountain, a fiery volcano, and at the top, they throw themselves into the inferno.
It's a made-up story, obviously. And I don't know how it came about, truthfully, which one of us thought of this, but it just came about like it was a love story, and this sort of these two lovers climbing up this volcano. Don't ask me why a volcano, but as the music built, they got further and further up the volcano, and then in the end, that was it. They threw themselves into the volcano, and that was a bit silly, really. But
We've always believed that we need a narrative, even if it's in our own heads. We don't have to sell it to anybody else. But for us, it's a driving force of what we're doing. And so it was a Romeo-Juliet scenario of two lovers that were destined not to be together in life, but to be together eternally in death.
He killed me. In other words.
We killed each other. we
both jumped, didn't we?
we jumped together. So we skate out into position, and we turn and face each other. And for us, the performance really kind of starts here because we're looking really into each other's eyes. And at that point, we're kind of talking to each other and calming each other down. And from there, we both go down, right knee down, left knee down. And we have a moment that we always keep focus. And we go into our first position, 4 counts, and then we start moving our first leg here. And right from here, becomes the eye contact. We never leave eye contact from here, at this point from here. This is where they're sort of setting their fate from this moment on. Creating the pact that we decided. And as you can see at the moment, nobody's blades are on the ice. Jane goes forward into an arch, we go up into a lift and out of it, and now she's touched the ice. That's 4 minutes, 10 seconds. And then off we go into the rest of the routine.
It's not the literal storyline that runs through your head. It's more of a feeling, the feeling of desperation because you know something bad's going to happen.
But also it's the desperate love that you felt for each other, the emotion, and that this is a very dramatic moment in your life, and we're heading towards something epic.
You couldn't not feel the tension of a piece like that because I think the way the music is written, it builds its own tension. And the way they created the piece to go with it built its own tension.
So this move in part of our story is the point where I'm getting tired and Chris is going to carry me and help me along. So this was the inspiration behind this move.
As you can see, we've got a new prop today with us. It's the chair. Because when we're skating, it's like being on a bike. You actually have the motion, but to actually do it stationary, it's very difficult. So I need a little aid here. So as we go into it, we go forward. Jane has to go past me, find the weight, balance, release, and then it all becomes on one foot. So we've just come out of the lay lift, and in our heads, the next part is that there's this look and this kiss of reassurance that we're both wanting and doing the same thing. And this picture was taken and shown a lot around the world, but it comes to this point here, and it's almost like a kiss.
It was a new thing to do something so intimate and not smiley and tricky. We weren't really there to entertain the public as much as we had in the past, like with routines like Barnum and Mac and Mabel. This was a complete departure. This was something that we wanted people to be drawn into, but for a different reason. I think in the Bolero we both learned the importance of eye contact and that intensity that you need with a routine like that to make it believable.
The focus between the two of them as they danced it, they're in this huge arena and yet they only had eyes for each other. It was just the two of them, as though they were in a quiet place, just on their own and just dancing.
Once you were committed to that, you really, there was nowhere to hide. You had to keep that momentum going, and that focus of attention to what they were doing. Absolutely brilliant.
When you go to the competition, it's all down to you. It's all your own equipment. You're in charge of your own equipment. And let me tell you, you're not going to let anybody else touch your boots and blades. They're your own. Whether it's from folklore or actual reality, but you don't want somebody messing with your blades. Not that I knew of it happening, but you always heard stories. Don't leave your blades in the dressing room by themselves.
These are the actual skating boots that I wore in the Olympics. Because I used to save all my old skating boots. I wouldn't throw them away, and especially not these. And I put a little label underneath that says Olympics. So they look sort of quite clean and shiny, but they are definitely well worn. And these are the famous skate guards that Chris always has to put in a certain position before we skate.
They're side by side. Then mine will be side by side. They'd be facing out towards the ice. And then they couldn't be moved until we came off.
And who was on which side?
I was on the right side, and on the left side.
That's kind of strange because normally I'm on this side.
Don't question it.
Okay. When we got to the venue, he would obviously have a look around and decide the best place to put the guards when we went on the ice that would not disturb anybody and they wouldn't get trodden on or moved. So there's a lot going on in Chris's head.
There have been instances where the guards have been disturbed and the performances haven't gone so well. So when something like that happens, even if it's once, it's a superstition after that. They've got to remain as they do.
He was deeply superstitious about the guards, and he still is to this day.
In some kind of way, those guards represented Jane and myself, and we didn't want them disturbing, that they were uniformly put together and stood together. And we didn't want somebody crashing into them and knocking them all over the place, because in some way that felt like a representation of us on the ice. As I say the words, I want to take them back because they sound so silly. Courtney Jones was a judge and a former world champion, very respected within the skating community, and his partner was Bobby Thompson. For most of our career, Bobby and Courtney have been mentors for us, or gurus, part of our inner circle that we would always discuss everything with. But also, Courtney was a fashion designer, and so it made perfect sense that he was going to design the costumes.
Chris and Jane have very definite ideas of what they like, and so it was a sort of, we just sat around the table and said, well, what about this and what about that?
The costume was very much a cottage industry kind of thing. We bought the silk for my top.
We dyed it so that it was what we call ombre effect, so it got deeper at the bottom and as it matched his trousers. And what we did was we got the material and hung it in a bucket with the dye in it. And every time we passed, we dipped it a bit further into the dye every day. So as the days went on, it got darker.
And this is the famous spoon which had previously been used to stir the casserole, stirred the dye every 2 hours for the crepe de chine, which was layered. We just did it slowly to get this shaded effect.
And then it went away to be pleated. And in the end, I used a paintbrush on it to actually deepen it even more.
I liked the colour of an iris. For me, it was that colouring from the purple that shaded ombre'd up, and it's got the yellow or golden part in the middle of it, and I think that's where the colour scheme came from.
Jane's was made of pure silk chiffon, which in those days was really the only thing that actually was suitable because the polyester didn't move as well on the ice. When we first had them made, we took them to Nottingham Ice Rink in the middle of the night, and they turned all the house lights on because when I fitted costumes, I did it from the back of the seating because they're not seen close up. The person sitting rows and rows back has to be able to see the detail. And so they started off ankle length almost, the chiffon. And what I did was I had a large pair of cutting shears, and as they went through the routine, I cut off the skirt so it didn't touch the ice. So they went through all the lifts and movements that they did, and slowly, as the hours progressed, it got shorter and shorter. That's why it has a ragged edging to it. It isn't an even hem.
When you think you've got something made up quite nicely, and then somebody comes out with a pair of huge scissors and start cutting slices off it. But the end product was that it really worked well.
So now Torvill and Dean face the supreme test. Champions of Europe, champions of the world, but can they now become the Olympic champions?
The whole thing had been set up for this one number. You know, because we all got into the fact, there they are, a British couple, got a smell of winning a gold medal. We'd watch them dance their paso doble, we'd watch them with the technical stuff, and here it is, the final. 24 million, that's half of the whole population of Britain at the time, is tuned in to watch this. I was passing through this village on the way to Cambridge, and I could see through a window, the television was on, and I could see a family preparing. And I thought, I can't spend the rest of my life saying I was in a car listening to it on the radio. I mean, how can you listen to ice skating on the radio? So I parked the car, knocked on the door and said, I'm sorry to be a complete nuisance, but I was hoping to get back. Come in, they said, come in. And that was the attitude, and everyone was waiting to see this great moment. So the attitude was there, people were warm about it. And so I sat and watched the whole thing with a family in a little village on the way to Cambridge.
The competitors that were in the top group, and Chris and I, Karen and Nikki, got on the same bus.
I remember it so clearly. It was raining, and I could see Jane's reflection just in the window, just in front of me. She was sat in front of me, as we always did. We always sat near each other or with each other. But as I just kind of gazed at her reflection, I thought, I think I've got a tough day, but this is going to be life-changing.
There you are, travelling on the bus with your nearest rivals sitting, you know, a couple of rows behind you, and you always say hello to them, and, you know, there's not much conversation because the Russians didn't speak much English and vice versa, so, but yeah, again, a quiet bus with a bit of tension in the air. The routine was that we arrived at the arena, we both walked in together, went to the separate changing rooms.
When I arrived there in the evening, I just wanted to make sure when I was in the communal changing room, like a hockey room, that I sat in the same spot that I'd sat every day the past 10 days. And so it was important for me to be in that same spot. So I wanted to get there early enough that somebody else hadn't taken it, because I could well have done. And if they had, I would have, in some polite way, moved them out and taken my spot again, because it was important. It was what I'd done every day. And you wanted to replicate that. You didn't want change.
The leading 5 pairs in the competition skate in the final pool to decide the gold, the silver and the bronze medals. They're about to warm up as we go now to the Olympic Stadium and Alan Woods, where I'm sitting here along with 8,500 other people, not only in the seats, but I must say that they are sitting in the aisles, in the gangways, they're standing around the back. This building has not yet been as full as it is tonight.
In the warm-up, I went out and scuffed the ice up a little bit, because fresh, clean ice is slippy. And when you're kneeling, I didn't want to slide around. And so if the ice is scuffed up a little bit, it gives you a little bit more traction. So knowing the spot, I went in and skidded over it.
I saw Chris scuffing up the ice in the middle because he knew that's where we were starting and he didn't want it to be too slippy. So it was just a little ploy. It was quite clever, I thought.
And a lot of competitors go out and they practice moves from the routine.
At this point, I was trying to get every lift in that was within my 4-minute routine. I was trying to do all the bits that worried me. And I glanced over to Chris and Jane, and they were just like literally forward pushes, stroking around the ice, and they never touched. So it already gave you that feeling of, I'm panicking, but they're so prepared. They don't need to use that warm-up as the rest of us did. It was that last chance.
I think sometimes the other competitors thought that it was a bit strange. They thought we were maybe doing it to try and psych them out. But it was actually more of a practical reason that we didn't want to get injured.
You never give way in the warm-up. And I'm not the biggest guy, but I never give way. You just learn to be strong. And it's a battle. And you take your position on the ice, and you're in that. You're in the top of the world. This is how you do it.
The Russians have a bit of a reputation. They're going to do whatever they're going to do, regardless of who might be in the way. And sometimes even get hurt in a warm-up, which sounds silly, but everybody's doing the business, going backwards, flying around, and that can happen. And in our heads, we're so confident in what we're doing that we don't need to do those practices. We know what we're there to do. And so psychologically, I think to everybody that was there, that was watching, competitors, judges, and even ourselves, there was a certain confidence in the way that we approached the whole aspect. It's like we're not giving anything away until we perform it, until that music starts, and that's when the performance starts.
And it's Michael and Judy from the United States who start this last session.
After we finished warming up, we were fifth to skate, so that's going to be like 20 minutes later. And that 20 minutes is a long 20 minutes. When it's 20 minutes, we stepped off the ice, put the guards back on, went behind the stands, didn't listen to anybody else's scores or watched their routines.
In our minds, it was about what we had to do and not about watching others, and even to the point that if we were in a corridor that was near enough, you could hear the marks. When the marks came up for the other competitors, we used to cover our ears.
I didn't want to hear that somebody had skated really well just before we were going out. And so it was like really the cage lion moment of pacing up and down, just wanting to be out there.
The main challengers to Jane Torvill and Christopher Dean. Remember, this isn't a cut and dried situation. Jane and Chris have got to beat this couple in this free dance.
It's almost gladiatorial, you know, that you can hear the stadium, you can hear the anticipation, and you're in the background warming up and getting ready.
When I left the dressing room, I put on a tracksuit top, team top, and it's not until you take that off and step onto the ice that you take on the persona that your performance is all about. That's when you feel that you're really in the zone, as it were. You've got the costume, you've got the skates on, and that's all you have to think about and focus on.
When I'm putting on my skates, and it happens every time, but certainly at the Olympics, just at that point where you're tightening up before you go out, you get this really tired feeling. It's almost you're plateauing, that you've had all this anticipation, and that last little bit before you go out and skate or you go out and warm up, there's a sense of, I'm really, your body feels heavy, you feel a bit sluggish. But I've come to realize it's part of the process, that you seem to get this level of adrenaline that's been at a certain level and it plateaus, but then it spikes again when you go out. So I anticipate that feeling, knowing that when I go out there's going to be a new breath of life when you go out.
Betty, as we stood on the ice, ready to be announced, would always tap us on the shoulder and say, "Skate well." And that was her good luck to us, really. We always felt good that she'd done that. If she, for any reason she wouldn't have been there, I think we would have felt strange. She made a point of not saying good luck, but skate well, because it's not about luck, it's about skating well.
They are 4 minutes away from Olympic gold. And the reason they're waiting is that at the other end of the rink, that little girl has picked up a bouquet and has trying very hard to pick up something that was stuck to the ice. She's a tiny little girl. You can see how small she is alongside the barrier. And my goodness, what a moment to come on the ice.
They usually have youngsters going around the ice picking up flowers and this sort of thing. I remember there was one little girl, if my memory serves me right, they sort of looked towards her. Maybe that cut a little bit of the tension, which they must have been feeling.
Jane smiling at the little girl as she goes off, and they await the announcement to start their free dance.
Remember, stood there, that's that moment. We've got hand in hand, and it's all connected, you know, you're all connected, it's all alive. And we'll just do a final glance and a squeeze of the hand.
We'd been waiting for that moment that was going to count, that we were going to perform it, and it was going to count.
There's no turning back. This is the time. This is the moment. We knew what we had to do. We just skated out to position. We were very centered and calm. But when I think about it now, the anticipation of all of that, it almost takes your breath away.
It felt like I was looking down, watching myself.
Like we're in an altered state of consciousness as we were doing it.
again, a roar of applause, and on the far side of the rink, the people are standing and applauding. The Union Jacks are flying around the rink, but not
The very end was there was that feeling of so much excitement, but at the same time this huge sense of relief.
a really dramatic performance by Jane Torvill and Christopher Dean. With those Bolero,
In some ways, there's a slight sadness because you won't be doing that ever again. And you can't, when you've enjoyed something, you think, oh, I want to do that again. And it was that kind of a feeling.
still, they applaud.
I just remember going to take a bow and then just a sea of flowers coming at me from everywhere. I just heard this massive roar. And I looked up and saw all the sixes.
It's right across the board! That's it! What a marvellous, marvellous set of marks!
It was a full row of sixes, and it was like,
This was just a phenomenal moment. I mean, it never happened.
People like that who do things really well and appear to do it terribly easily are good to watch.
Do you know, I watched it and I got so excited that when those sixes started flying out, I jumped up and, but like that, in euphoria, fractured my thumb on the wall. When they just got clean sixes, I mean, the whole family and I just leapt into the air. And I thought that's fair, that's right. They are the best. I have witnessed something that I may never witness again in my life.
Well, it's just once in a lifetime. Very special. That's it.
Well, now we can go straight back to the Olympic arena, where tonight, as you will well know, Torvill and Dean from Great Britain have won the Olympic Championship.
Gold medal Olympic champions Jane Torvill, Christopher Dean.
Once again, Jane and Chris receive the plaudits of the crowd. Cheers, roars from this very mixed audience, from all nationalities around the world, everyone appreciating their skill, their art.
when we stepped onto the podium and the medal was placed around our neck.
3 times in European Championships, 3 times in World Championships, and along the way accumulated more maximum marks than any other skaters. Now, it's the most cherished prize in sport, Olympic gold medals, for the greatest ice dancers of all time.
And the flags going up and the national anthem playing. That is one of your proudest moments ever.
They're playing the national anthem. You've got a massive gold medal around your neck, which is, it's the best thing ever. When it's around your neck, that's when it's like, yes, we really, really did win the gold medal, because I'm wearing it right now.
The charisma that they had on the ice drew the whole country and drew anybody from other nations who was lucky enough to watch them. I'm not sure what there was to ask them. I mean, no interviewer wants to say, how do you feel? But that's actually what the public, they wanted to hear from them. It didn't matter, all I had to do was to stick a microphone in front of them. But they were still very shy, and so I had to push it a little bit.
Look at you two, please. Jane and Chris, I think you must know that the reaction in the rink has just been mirrored many millions of times over around the homes of Great Britain. On behalf of the people watching, may I just say many congratulations.
Yeah.
Tell me, if it's possible, which emotion is uppermost in your minds?
I can't believe it. I can't believe it.
We can't remember the skate. It just happened, came, and it went.
There was none of this. There was none of roaring away at having been successful. They had done what they'd set out to do, so there was a quiet reaction.
You seemed so relaxed before you went on the ice. I mean, you even smiled, didn't you, at the little girl?
Yes, I felt that I wanted to go out there and perform, and I was happy there were so many people here from England and from Nottingham especially.
One or two of them from where you used to work.
That's right, yes.
So many people came along from everywhere tonight, but it was a great support. We really felt it.
What do you do now in terms of a celebration?
Don't know.
I'm told there's a party organised back at the village, Chris, is that right?
I didn't
no
know
idea.
that. You didn't know.
Most probably we were supplying the bed tonight.
You really don't feel like doing it, but you have to do a press conference. You just want to go back and sort of share it with your fellow team members. After all that excitement, you have to go to doping control. You've got this undignified moment of having to produce a sample, so that kind of brings you back down